Welcome to Ascension with V, where we talk about spiritual awakening, ascension, and everything in between. I'm your host, Stashia Jeanette, aka V, and today we have a special guest who's about to take us on a journey with their unique gifts and experiences. Christopher Kay, amazing things that you're doing. I'm so excited to have you here. I've been diving deep into all the stuff that you've been a part of, the things that you're doing, and I'd love for you to just give us kind of a rundown of who you are and what you're about.
Such a big question, isn't it? Who are we?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, I've been a filmmaker. I'm from Australia, so I've been in Melbourne, Australia most of my life. I have traveled a lot, but this is where I hang my hat. And I've been a filmmaker for quite a long time, probably going on about 15 years, but professionally at least maybe 8 or so years of those. And I sort of had to go through the motions of going through a job that I didn't like, still had the creativity in the background and keeping that as my fuel and my lifeblood. And then having to get to basically a crisis point before I really dived in and thought, I'm just going to run with fate on this one and actually move into my creative space and my sole purpose. And I thought my sole purpose was merely just being creative and making films and doing what make my heart sing. But I forgot about the responsibility of what does that give back to the world and what are we actually doing to help other people. And slowly as I made films and I tried every genre out, I did horror films at one point, I did comedy, and I jumped into a bunch of stuff, and it was me in my 20s just experimenting.
Yeah.
And then I sort of started realizing that the responsibility that comes with film is very important, so I started making films of importance, which has led me to my current documentary Anavasi, which is basically a really in-depth look at the awakening process and how to navigate it, and everything crazy that's gone on the past 5 years. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, two things that I want to dive into from there to try to like segue into the Anavasi. But you mentioned the awakening and things of that nature. Can you tell me about what your ascension and awakening process was like and what was your big moment of realization? I mean, you said you wanted to transition into making things that were of importance. And I'm wondering if that had anything to do with your process of ascension and awakening.
Well, it absolutely did. There were two very big moments in my life, and
Okay.
one was a long corridor. So I'll give you the first one, and I'll give you the express version, so we're not here for 4 hours because it's a long one.
We
Um,
have an hour.
oh no, now is good. I think that's an affable time. So I went through I was always quite spiritually aware, would be how I'd put it, but I very much came
Okay.
from the head. I came from the intellect, and I didn't really come from feeling.
Right.
And this was probably when I think I was getting to my Saturn return. So I was nearly 30. I would have been about 29, 30, which is when some stuff really goes down in your life at times.
It is.
Yeah. So we had 7 deaths in my immediate family in the space of 3 years. So it was basically one
Whoa.
after another. And I navigated it okay because it was more impactful on my parents than me. And I sort of had to be the strong one, which is what I've been in my family. I've always been the referee. And I, led the charge. I was helping the family business. I basically turned my back on everything I was doing. I moved back home, had to be close to home. And whilst that was happening and my uncle was on his deathbed, he had an aneurysm and he was 55 years of age. I was in a car accident yeah, on the same day.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So I was driving along, miserable about what was going on, but also just kind of really frustrated about where my life was headed at that point. I'd gone through a breakup and I'd gone through all those plot points to lead to a really big catharsis and big tower moment. I've had a fair few of those, but I think I've asked for them. And
yeah,
it's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you just
Yeah.
you ask for them and they come faster and
Yes.
faster. So I basically, the guy who was driving the car was my best friend I hadn't seen in primary school for 20 years, give or take, or maybe more.
What?
And my car got split in half. I nearly got pushed through a house. So I got out of the
What?
car and I was on the front like porch or deck of someone's house. And I was like, how did I get here? And I got out and I didn't have a scratch. So
What?
I had a little bump on my knee and I had a bit of whiplash on the neck, and that was about it. And I got taken to the same hospital as my uncle. So he was on the 6th floor in neurology and I was down in the emergency department. And my uncle died about an hour later. So he was already on his last kind of breath at that point. And I was looking around going, okay, how am I okay? And I saw pictures of the car. The car was totaled.
Right.
And I'm like, there's no way that, like, it was like my driver's seat was hugged. It was like there was a full cushion and everything else was in pieces, even the back seat behind me, everything was finished. And I looked at all this and I really took a reflection point because I was like, okay, let's look at two things here. If I did die then, would I have been happy doing what I was doing? Was I on the right trajectory? Was I doing the right thing for my soul? And all these questions came up. And then out of the blue, I met a psychic who basically, it was by a chance meeting, who brought a lot out of me and started asking the right questions to lead me the right way. And I did a lot of work with her over a couple of years. And it brought me to this point of understanding, or understanding, I should say, what my purpose was here. And I knew
Right.
that I had to change some things in my life, but also my family's life. But I had to do that by leading by example. And once that's,
Yes.
and that's a big one, because it's
It is.
like I tried to tell them at the beginning, where it's that thing of, you need to do this, you need to do that. And
But
all
no.
I had to do was break my programming and show them the way to break theirs. And this is back in 2000 and I want to say 2010, somewhere there. It was leading up to 2012. So it was that couple of years. And then it was smooth sailing for quite a while. Like, it was me doing my film thing. I started from the ground up, and I started making a lot of content. And it got to a point where everything was going great until lockdown and COVID happened. And by that stage, I thought,
Uh,
hey, I've got everything figured out. I've already done this.
right.
This is
Oh, it's
easy.
fine.
This is
Yeah.
fine.
It's fine.
And the pressure that came with that, because Melbourne was, where I'm from, was pretty bad for lockdowns. Like, we went through, I think, one of the most amount of lockdowns in the world. I think we were second. And it was really, really excessive here.
Like what was it? Was it like
That we had like about a 3 mile radius that you couldn't leave your house. You couldn't leave your house
what?
after, yeah, you couldn't leave your house after 10 p.m. Otherwise, there'd be police and there were helicopters around. It was really full on.
What?
Yeah, it was wild here. So we navigated that for, it was about 2 years worth. It was on and off. Like, they'd lift the gate up, everything's okay, bring it back, lift the gate, and I knew where it was going.
Right.
And I was very much in the angry fight against it. I was really
Yes.
pissed off, and I thought,
This.
when that happens, you come from, I think it's a rite of passage to do this, but you sort of have to go through the anger corridor before you realize that's not the way.
You do. You do.
Yeah, and I was so mad at what was happening, and I was trying to enlist people to, where we've got to do this, and I was telling people, "Are you crazy? Turn the news off, watch this," and sending them videos and doing all
Yes.
this stuff. And it took me a while, because that's when the documentary started taking shape, because my work totally went away from film. I couldn't go and make a film anymore. I was like, this is going to be very hard now. We're in lockdown. I can't
Right.
leave certain parts and blah, blah, blah. So I started writing this documentary, but it came from the wrong place. It came from a very angry place.
Angry. Yeah.
And then I realize now, at least in the aftermath of it, that it needs to all come from places of compassion, because even the people who don't have the same idea as you, or they're so locked into their programming, or they're not spiritually awake, or they're not aware of anything that's going on in their surroundings, they still think they're doing the right thing. So they're not bad people.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
it really does humble you when you see that. And then when you
Yeah.
start paying it back the correct way in your own awakening process and your own ascension process, that's much more powerful than trying to drag people by the collar with you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's
Yes.
it's been a ride for the last 10 years. I'll say that.
Yeah. And that is really that's a real thing. The leading by example thing, not just within the family, but like in general in what you do, but within your family setting, being the one that kind of breaks the generational curses, or being the one that, chooses the different path, chooses the ascension path, chooses the awakening and the healing path. Like it's a lot of work, it's a lot of pressure, but you doing it kind of holds the torch, holds the candle for everyone, for everyone else behind you, because really you can talk until you are blue in the face and try to tell, your family, your friends, people that you love and are close to, of, hey, these are the things that you have to do, and this is the steps that you have to take in order to get to X, Y, and Z. And they will not. And sometimes, like, they'll resent you for it. Like, I didn't ask for your help, and things of this nature. And then you end up kind of ultimately being the one that gets hurt from it. But when you take the lead, so to speak, and just focus on you and your journey, it creates kind of that ripple effect. It's so it was interesting to hear you say that you too did that in your life and in your family, and that's what kind of set the tone for you. But also you mentioned the thing of, not doing things from a place of anger because it's not the way. What was the old saying they used to say? You catch more flies with honey than you
Yeah,
do with.
catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Yeah,
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 that's it. That's it. That's
yeah.
it. That's the one. Yes.
And I
Exactly.
totally, totally agree with that. I think that's in any walk of life. And it's not that you're trying to break them out of their butterfly cocoon quicker, because you're going to kill them if you do that. They may not be ready. And I've realized now that some souls may never be ready in your lifetime. And you've
Right.
just got to accept that that's their journey of, that path of growth, that they're just here
Yes.
to incarnate and have it on that very physical realm kind of level and not go beyond this time around. And the more I see that, the easier it gets to navigate life and to create your own world and harmony around you, which is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. I used to say frequently, like, we only take willing participants, because again, not everybody signed up to do this ascension, and not everybody signed up to do the healing and the awakening and the growth. Some people are just, here to be, like you said, on just that, the physical plane of existing. And we just have to, the thing of learning to just accept people as they are, where they are, has been one of the hardest but most freeing things that I have ever gone through. Because wanting to help everyone and save everyone is like a beautiful thing, but it can do you more harm than good, when you're trying to help and save people who don't want to be helped or saved.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the lesson too, is like, it's your own growth corridor, because you're really just fighting mirrors and those parts of yourself that you need to see as well. And that's
Yes.
what I kept doing.
Yes.
And once you notice that, even in your relationships or whatever it might be, it's a really profound thing for your own growth corridor as well. And you just keep getting better at navigating it.
Yeah. What do you feel like has been the most difficult part for you in your ascension?
Relationships,
Really?
hands down. And not relationship, and I mean romantic relationships more than anything.
Like how?
I haven't had time for it because I feel like I've got so much work to do while I'm here. So while I've put in time to relationships, and I have had relationships in the past, when they've gotten to, their dissolving point where they're no longer a thing, I feel like I get most of my work done when I'm not in one, which I know is avoidance.
It does,
and
is
and it's like, yeah, there's no time for that. I've got to go and be enlightened and meditate on a mountain somewhere, and then we'll come back to that. And that's going to be we'll worry about that later. And then
right.
all of a sudden you realize that that's actually your best lesson to confront. So
It is.
I'm not in a rush to force it. It's not like a
Right.
thing that I know is expected of me, or I don't actually miss it, or I don't crave it and need it. But it's a thing that I know I need to do the correct way, and I'm still not there. It's like that's definitely the area where I need work on the most. And I feel with that process, the beauty of it is, while you're going through that ascension process, you're actually harmonizing on a level where you're going to then attract people of
Exactly.
that equal
Equally yoked.
vibration. And
Yes.
rather than the lower vibration that brings that worst out of you, that pulls you back down, because
Exactly.
misery does love company. It is
It's
definitely a
so
true phrase. Yeah.
It's so true. It literally is so true. And it is that. I tell people all the time, like, don't get in a relationship just to have somebody, or just to say that you have a companion, or whatever, just because you don't want to be alone. If you're not healed and ready, you're going to continuously, like you said, start continuously attract the same kind of people, because that's where you're at. Like, you in within yourself have not healed enough to break out of that same batch of people, right? And it does, it starts just keeping you stagnant. Yet there is a level of, someone told me not long ago that, like, you do the most healing and growing when you're in a relationship. Like, there's only so much healing and growing that you can do while you're single or like by yourself, and that being in a relationship has its own part of the process as well. But there is a, like you said, there is a right way. There is a right way of going about getting into a relationship, a spiritually based relationship.
Yeah, very much so. And I've seen, I've never been that kind of person. There's people who go through a breakup and then throw themselves into the next thing
Immediate,
over and over and over. And there's not even a gap to like, go
ever.
through a grieving process of any description, because it is like a death to a degree. You sort of need to let it go. You need to go through those processes of grief, and then you need to really look inward and look at yourself. And like I take a lot of pride in saying that I've done a lot of work on myself, but I don't think it
Yeah.
ever ends. It
No,
never
it doesn't.
ends.
It
And
doesn't.
anyone who says that I've done enough work, I'm like, that's a bit of a red flag there. What do you mean
Right,
you've done
literally.
enough? No, no one, no one has done enough work. We're all here to keep doing it.
That's that's literally me. I'm like, oh my god, red flag, red flag. Ew. Yes, exactly that. No, you're never to the point where you're like, look, I'm healed and everything is great and I'm like I'm perfect and I'm perfectly refined and so pure. No, you're not. You are never going to be that ever. Like ever. Yes. But back on the task at hand here. How did your health affect your journey, do you think?
That's probably the biggest one, because I have spoken openly about it, but I've only been comfortable to probably the last, 6 months or so publicly. And I have spoken about this on some other podcasts and interviews. And my health crisis, I'll call it, that I went through at the time was actually when the really hardest part of that whole awakening process had to take place. So I think it had to happen.
Yeah,
And it was there to break away the last pieces of those layers and strip down that programming, because I've always identified with, oh, I'm a filmmaker, that's what I do. And I'm a creative artist, and that's what I put myself out there as. And then basically what an illness did, because I've never been scared of death, like not even from young. I just haven't had that
same,
component in me.
same.
But then this came along and was like, okay, but what if this takes all your faculties away? You're not able to make anything, you're not able to do anything. Then where are you going to be? And you've really got to stop and look at yourself. And it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I'm so eternally grateful for it, because it was bad at the time, but it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And the reason it happened was it was after my anger phase in 2020. And it got to about 2021, and I was in a relationship at the time as well. And that really got tested. It did end that relationship, but that got tested too. But what had happened during it was I somehow it was like a parasite of sorts. Now, it's interesting because I was in a lot of parasitic relationships at the time. So it sort of was playing on multiple levels.
Yo, right. I'm like,
And yeah, it was very much you could really quantify what this was.
what was happening?
And it was all in the gut, which again was the solar plexus was completely attacked, which is where I've made all of my decisions from. It's my strongest trait. And it's like, that's where my courage comes from. That's where my authenticity
Creativity.
comes from, creativity, everything. And that was completely beyond repair. So
Mm.
I spent a year and a half. I had to go through basically a bland diet. I couldn't eat anything that was, kind of this thing. I barely even slept well for about a year and a half. I'm pretty sure I was averaging about 3 hours a night. It was not healthy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I lost about 20 kilos. I don't know what that is in pounds, but
A lot,
yeah,
though.
it
Like
was a lot
a
of weight.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went through victim mentality for quite a
Hmm.
while, which you don't realize you're in it, even though you're like, oh, no, I'm stronger than this. You're still saying, why me? And you're quite upset
Exactly.
that it's happening to you. And I got the best learning curve of my life, because this was when Western medicine, as we know it, was sort of going through that collapse point where people were starting to see through the illusion that it is.
Yeah.
And I know you still need things. If I break my leg, I'm not going to get some crystals and say some good prayers and hope that it
Right.
repairs.
Ta-da.
I'm going to need a cast, right?
Yes.
But for problems of the emotional and spiritual and physical level working together, I really had to do some work.
Yeah.
And I saw the real bad side of Western medicine, where even I got diagnosed with something and I didn't believe it. I was like, bullshit, I'm not buying
Yes.
this. And
Yeah.
they were like, no, you've got the markers. This is what, and I was like, no, I don't care.
Mm.
I'm not
Yeah.
taking this as my reality. And then I happened to meet a lot of people on the naturopathic side and allopathic, like rather than allopathic side. So seeing more of that, people who were doing holistic healing on every kind of degree. And this is reflexology, chiropractors, like just a different mix of people. And I saw all these people for a while. Now, the difference was it still took me a while to find some good people, because
Exactly.
even in
Exactly.
natural medicine, they're the
Yeah.
same as the Western medicine umbrella. They're a
Yes.
subscription system. Rather than giving you these pills, they'll give you this natural thing, and they'll say, oh, you
Substance.
yes,
Yes.
yes, supplements, and you'll need to take this for 2 years, and
Exactly.
it cost $150 for every bottle.
$9,000 a
Yeah.
pill. Yeah.
And I'm like, I saw the same thing play out, but then I found some really beautiful, beautiful people along the way. So I think you've got to move through some of the crap in order to find the gold.
It is.
And when you do find the gold and you realize that they're the ones who tell you that you're only going to see me for a very short period of time while I help you get back on your feet, and
Yes.
you are actually the person doing the healing. It's not the pills, it's not
Yes.
the massage, it's not the recorrecting your spine or the acupuncture. It's opening your chi up, and your energy is actually doing the healing at a cellular level. And once I started doing that was when I started recovering. It took a
Hmm.
long time to get there. I changed my diet, but now the habits it's left me with once I've gotten back to 100% health are fantastic ones, because I'm eating better. I know to move around. I'm regulating my time. I'm sleeping better. I'm right on the circadian rhythm clock, and it's been
Exactly.
amazing. So I think it was part of an upgrade of sorts. And
Yes.
that's what I think it was. And at the time I thought, why does it have to be this severe? Why does it have to be this mean?
Yeah.
And when you go through that dark night of the soul, it's the hero's journey. You have to be
Yeah.
down where you're on your knees. It looks like the last round. It looks like you're never going to get back
On
up.
bended knee, right?
Yep. And then all of a sudden the miracle happens, and you're like Rocky Balboa jumping up and
Yes.
down.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing thing, but when you're in it, it's terrible. And when you're
Rough.
through it and you look back, it's an amazing thing. And then I know you do this too. You tell your story quite openly, and people who may be going through similar circumstances take a lot of, you know, comfort in what you're telling them, and you're kind of leading by example while you do that. And it's a really
Right.
beautiful thing, I think, for everyone to share their own health journey openly.
Yeah. But Chris, this is I think the first time that I had I just listened to what God Source Universe tells me to ask you about. So really honestly, I didn't know what your health thing was. So like it was like a mind-blowing thing for me, but it's is very similar, to the things that I have experienced and gone through, where also, it was my stomach, it was my gut stuff that was going on. And kind of same situation, people are now like, how did you do it? How'd you get off of all this stuff? And it was like a moment of me realizing, like, I don't think this is even anything that's actually physical. Like, it was a lot of, like you said, it was like a lot of upgrades. It was a lot of, me going through a lot of different activations. It was me going through a lot of the dark night of the soul. It was a lot of the death and rebirth process that was happening and taking place. And I think this happens a lot more to people than we think, and I tried to outline that when I wrote my book, and things of this nature, of things of what you can potentially go through, that you and I, went through, and we didn't know, like, at the time, what this was or what was going on. But again, you didn't stay in that timeline. You didn't accept that story of, like, this is what you have, and this is what you're going to be. You kind of, not even kind of, you took your power back and was like, no, I'm not having that. No, that's not what this is going to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah,
And that
it's so important. It's
it
so important and the externalization of power is something that
yes.
people do without realizing. It's on any level where if you give something credence outside of yourself and say that if I don't take this supplement, I will be
Hmm.
like this. So if I miss one day of this, I'll become sick again. You've already
Right.
implemented that programming in your mind, and your body is going to follow suit. That's just what's going to happen. Everything's going to align that way and push that way. And I always see it as, like, obviously there's some people where if they've got a low iron deficiency or anything on that kind of level and they need to take something for the rest of their lives and it works for them, that's okay. But
Right.
it's a matter of what you're giving power to externally, including the doctor who tells you you've got a year to live. And you're like,
Right.
okay, I guess I'll just accept that and I'll go off somewhere and die then. And it's like most people do that. They're just like, yeah, well,
Yes.
that's okay. Well, that's my outcome and
That's what
that's
it
what I
is.
have. And this is even down to the point of, and this isn't to talk about anyone's individual experiences, but cancer. And
Right.
when it's passed through generationally and you're a kid who's seen a parent or lost a parent to an illness, and then they tell you your whole life that it's genetic, it's genetic, it's genetic, you're going to
Right.
manifest those outcomes out of fear. And that fear vibration of leaving that fear vibration in your body, you will create your own worst outcomes on a subconscious level without even realizing it. And I damn well know I was doing that for quite a while.
Same.
And then as soon as you break through that other side and you realize it's up to you and how you react to things and what power you give it and give up that energy to it. And as soon as I swinged that way,
Yes.
things started getting better and things started healing and repairing. Now, this isn't to say that the physical side still doesn't
Right.
need some love and some nurturing, right?
Right. Right. Right.
So whatever, like with the gut issue I had, whatever damage was actually done during that point, because there was still some damage done on a physical level, that I had to give that time to repair itself and everything else. But I call it almost the trinity of healing. This is one thing
Hmm.
that I've always looked at it as. I was getting spiritual during this. I was seeing a counselor for emotional coaching because my mental state was just not good, because you're going in and out of doctor's offices. You can't afford to go to your job. You haven't, you can't pay your rent, whatever it might be. And then fixing the physical ailment. And if you're doing all those three things in harmony, that just brings you and elevates you out of that illness. And that was my own experience of it.
Right. And and there's also the thing of, you mentioned there is still that physical aspect of things, but what did you feel like was the time period that you had to give yourself to physically heal?
It's funny because the more I put a time limit on it, the harder it got. Because
Hmm.
I'd get to that finish line and I wouldn't be better and I'd be very upset and I'd be like, am I still like this? It was as soon as I had no expectations that
Yeah.
it lifted. And it was like, well, it'll be today's another day. And it actually made me live in the present.
Yeah.
And that was the best thing that could have happened, because I looked at it as, I've always been a person who needs to project forward, especially when making a film. You need to see the final product while you're making it. So that's just
Right.
part of my makeup. But in my
Yeah.
life, I shouldn't be doing this, because it's
Can't.
like, tomorrow it all
Can't.
changes. You need to stay fluid and flexible and keep
Yes.
weaving. And that was a big call for me, was basically to say, I don't need to set a deadline to say I'll be better by this
By
specific
this time.
month.
Yeah.
And as soon as I pushed through that, and it was like each day I get better and better, I give thanks, I show gratitude, I go through the day, I'm happy to wake up in the morning, I'm still functioning, I'm still able to at least orally eat food. So
Yeah.
I've got some really good positives in the right direction. And as I was ticking them off and I focused more on the positive than the negative, it was
Yeah.
a total flip. And that's where everything became a lot better.
Yeah. Did you, because I also did this with the diet change thing, but did you notice that there were certain things that your body started not being able to tolerate?
And I think this is also part of us becoming lighter bodies.
Yes.
It's very much, I can't drink alcohol anymore, and I probably will never will for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, that we're, even the etymology of the word alcohol, it comes from algul, which is spirit, which is why we call them
The
spirits. And
spirits.
you're
Yes.
allowing entities to attach to you.
To
And I went through my 20s enjoying and partying and doing all that kind of stuff. I got it out of my system. But
right.
I know now where what we ingest energetically, so
Yeah.
the people we're around, what
Yes.
content we watch, what shows you're watching, and what food you eat, and everything else that you do is something that you're ingesting for your own, well-being. And
Yes.
now I'm very much more aware of that. My body made me more aware of it before my brain got aware of it, but then I was like, okay, I've got to harmonize these things. And leading into that whole harmonizing of trying to get that balance to play out, I've looked at where my health has sort of gone in an upward swing now. Is
Yes.
I've moved away from having any preconceived notion of going into this thing of, I'll just eat with ignorance or I'll just drink with ignorance and it doesn't matter what
Right.
this is. And I even flip this now to herbal tinctures like teas and stuff, because at the end of the day, they're medicine. And this
Right.
is and this is with anything that we put in our bodies, where if I start feeling a little bit of a rundown thing coming on and I need to take some supplements in order to get on top of it quicker or have a cup of nettle tea or whatever it might be, I'm putting intention into that while I'm taking it. So it's like, this is for its purpose and I'm not going to be
Yeah,
on this forever and taking it. And that's what it is. So
exactly.
yeah, so everything I put in my body now is because of purpose.
Intentional.
It's totally intentional.
Intentional.
And my body doesn't like certain things.
Yes.
Sugar, I've been
Like
able
what?
to sort of go back to a touch, but there's
Yes.
times where there's a very fine line where it's like not this,
Same.
not that. And if it's
Same.
naturally formed sugars in fruits or whatever, no problem. If it's
Yes.
refined and there's a lot of chemicals or there's a lot of flavorings, no good. So I just avoid now.
Like the high fructose corn syrup. That's a thing for me. Anything that I've found that has high fructose corn syrup, in America, it's like rampant. Everything has it in it. So I've had to go to like all the stuff that is natural, organic, and things of this nature. I said it was the example of going from like a base model, these Honda Civic, to like a Rolls Royce, essentially, and like everything like the literally the maintenance that you have to have for the interior of the Rolls Royce and the exterior of the Rolls Royce is literally how my body is now. But it's a real thing. My that has been another huge component of my healing as well, is like I just don't put crap in my body. Like,
Do you find because of that your connectedness to your higher self and everything is much like easier and fluid to get to? Like it becomes a lot faster. There's less blockages.
yeah, like I mean, in general, I think dying, metaphorically and quite literally multiple times, has kind of put me more connected than usual with it. But I noticed when I was on all the medications and taking all of the just eating whateverness, it took me a really long time to get into a phase of let me meditate and let me have my clear channel. I wasn't as clear of a channel now, where like now I could go and put the recording on and start talking for hours on whatever it is that God source universe wants to come through. But yeah, that's been a big thing. But my body has like explicitly told me, hey, we can't eat fried this anymore. Hey, we can't eat, poultry anymore. I don't do red meat. I don't do pork. I don't do essentially almost any meats anymore. Like my body just kind of dictates like we can't do this, and I just don't. And
Mm,
and like you said with the sugars create so much issue within me, like pain wise, and think that's my body's biggest signal of being like, stop taking this, stop eating this. And when I don't, fine, like you said with the fruits like natural sugars, fine.
yeah.
But stuff that's like, like the added sugar and things, can't.
Mm. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's when your body's telling you and you are well in tune with it and you know what to do and what not to do. And this brings that point forward where it's like every person is different. There are no crash diets that work for everybody.
At
There's
all.
this whole thing of everyone must have
Do
this, and you,
this,
this is the supplement
do
of the week,
this,
and take
eat.
that and eat that and don't
Yeah,
eat this. And I'm like, it's every single person is
correct.
different, and it's what
Correct.
finding what works for you is a unique balance, and
Yes.
it's what gives you that drive forward. But also the reason certain things I think react as well, especially more so these days, there's so much out there that's just fake food, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Like it's not even real anymore,
It's
where
not even
like
real.
you're seeing vegetables that are ripe the whole year round, and like when I was a
Right.
kid that wasn't the case. There'd be like a
Never.
season where you couldn't get something or it was mushy and you're like, what is this? Ugh, what
Ew.
is this?
Yeah. Like, ew.
And your
Yeah.
mum's like, eat your vegetables. What are you doing? And you're like,
No.
this
Why
is
is it
terrible.
mushy? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And now it's like year round, it looks the same. It's like fake food.
like
And
spray painted to
yeah,
to
that
look
too.
the literally.
Is organic expensive where you are?
It's so expensive. Like we have
Yeah.
I went to Whole Foods for the first time this year when you saw me making the tofurkey.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's the first time that I've ever been to Whole Foods because it's so freaking expensive here. And so all the stuff that I got to put into my tofurkey was from the Whole Foods. Literally, it was like 15 ingredients and it was like $250. You
Wow.
like it was
Wow.
just for those 15 ingredients for my now the tofu was really inexpensive, which shocked me. That was the least expensive thing that I bought there was the tofu. It was like $1.70. That might be expensive elsewhere, but you know, for the store, that was the cheapest thing that I got. But the fruits, the vegetables, the mushrooms, I got some shiitake mushrooms that had to go in it. The spinach, the kale, it was expensive. So
Wow.
expensive. Yeah,
Yeah, it's to eat well, and I mean, someone's always going to make a profit off it, and I get sometimes why it costs more, but even then, in the organic department, it's buyer beware. It's like you've got to
literally.
really meticulously look at what you're getting.
Look at the look at the back because I saw the other day at Target or yeah, at Target and there was a package that had on it like they put it on there like GMO, you know, and I'm like, "Ew,
It's bad. You
what?"
constantly have to read like
Literally
absolutely everything. Yeah.
everything. Like especially in America. I tell everyone, "Listen, a lot of the food is not real. Like you have to look. You have to look."
Wow.
Do you feel different since your
Yes.
health and NDA?
Yep. Totally different person almost. At my core and essence, it's the same person, but I feel like I've leveled up to a degree. And this comes
Yeah.
back to the right foods will calibrate me,
Mhm.
as well as the right soul purpose and what I'm doing aligning with that. And I feel like I can do the work of 150 people and not get tired when I'm doing the work. And then as soon as I go and do someone else's work, or
Yeah, and
I'm
you're like,
off to having to do something or be somewhere where I don't want to be, it's exhausting. And
yes,
it's the same thing as whatever we're sort of aligning with, and what aligns with us on a physical level and everything else and energetically gives us that drive to move forward. And I feel like my output has gone, I've always been a hard worker, but it's always come from the tireless effort kind of thing where I'd crash at the end of the day. Now it's
yeah,
very meditative through the board. So like I know when to pull back. I always know when to take time out. And then the evenings are sacred, and when to sort of do a wind down to go to sleep. And it's like, don't push past that. If I fall into a bad habit, which I have here and there, because it's like, life gets in the way, you sort
right.
of revert back. Your body reminds you, it gives you the little, and you're
Yeah,
like,
like, excuse me.
sorry. And you're
No,
like, okay,
oops.
yeah, no, I gotcha, I hear you,
You're
we're
like,
good. Yeah, so that's always been the case, but now it's very much stronger. And I feel like just a much stronger person, like in every kind of way, which is a really good thing. And I think we just keep walking the path, and whatever gets thrown at us, we get better at being on the roller coaster and not screaming, pretty much.
yeah.
Yeah, we're just having fun, you know what I mean? You got to
Yeah.
have fun too. Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly that. I always call it like the universe was like, so we're going whitewater rafting, but instead of skipping the introductory courses, we went directly to like the rapid falls.
Yes, yes, yeah, very good.
Is this? It's definitely this. But you mentioned about the feeling the alignment when you're doing like a soul led and aligned work. So how has that been implemented when you're filming? Like, have you ever had to film or recently filmed anything that like was not feeling aligned, but you had to finish it?
Good question. I lately know. Like
Okay.
I've basically been I've trusted the process, and I've
Hmm.
trusted the outcome, and that it's basically above me to a degree, where it's that thing of
Yes.
just trust, and the
Yeah.
rest will fall into place. And this has happened with the documentary. I'm sort of getting divinely led, is the only way I can really put this forward. When I've been interviewing people and something doesn't work out, there's a reason for it not working out. And I
Exactly.
used to get upset because it
Angry.
was that, I'm a film director, and
Yes.
control is the ultimate thing. That's our weapon, and used correctly, it's okay.
It's the Capricorn.
It's definitely the Capricorn. It's definitely the Capricorn. Says the Virgo over here.
Says the Virgo.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we had a few things that I was moving through it, and something would get cancelled, or I couldn't get to a location, and they were like, no, that's not working. And I'd be in the past, I would have been upset, and I'd be
Yeah.
like, oh man, that's stuffed the day up, and it's blah blah blah. But
Yes.
instead, I just go, well, that's not meant to be, then that's fine.
Yeah.
And within an hour, the problem's solved, and something just comes out of left field like a miracle. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh wow, here we go. So this is what we're actually meant to be doing, and the other
Yes.
thing wasn't meant to happen.
Yes.
And I've navigated this pretty much this current film that way. And it's one of the, I think the one of the best learning curves that I've had, because the work is showing even better as a result of that, because again, it's the intention getting put in that you get through the other side in anything you're doing in any walk of life. And we're putting in the correct intention into filming, that comes out the other side. And when the audience finally get to experience it, they'll experience that magic as well, which is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yes. What has been some of the more challenging moments with trying to film Anavasi, and how have you navigated those in your newfound it's just gonna be what it's gonna be ness?
Well, my biggest learning at the moment is patience.
Yeah.
And I am very much a finisher, in terms of
Yes.
when I start something, it will drive me mad if it's unfinished. I can't.
Yes. Yes.
Even if the project in the past has been no good, I still need to see it through and then learn
Yeah.
the lessons from it. I'm like, I can't just abandon it. And with this, it's been this thing of, there's so much positivity that's coming from this film. It's impacting people while I'm making it,
Right.
but it's also culminating this thing where once I get into a flow state with it and it's moving really, really quickly, I try and rush it even further, where I'm like, oh, cool, I'm going to shoot 4 interviews this week. I'm going to do this. And then
Yeah.
it just slows me down and it humbles me. And it's like, no, no, just take it easy. Like,
No.
calm down,
Yeah.
be patient. And the more I become patient, the more I get what I want, but in a long term way. And it's like, not get what I want, but get what I need.
Yeah.
And once that sort of becomes that flow on effect and it's a perfect circle, it's a really beautiful thing to navigate. Like, I wake up every day with a smile on my face while I'm working on this, and I'm just like, how lucky am I? Like, I've met indigenous people from all over the world. I've spoken to people where they've completely changed my mindset on something, or it was something that I didn't expect. So I'm going through that learning curve while I'm filming the thing. And then when people finally watch it, they'll have a learning curve that's totally different from mine watching it themselves, which is
Right.
amazing. So it's art. It's the art cycle, you know what I mean? It's a
Yes.
really beautiful thing. I'm inspired while I'm doing it.
Yes, and that's I feel like the most amazing place to be when you are fully like soul aligned with your destined purpose, your destined mission and what you're meant to be doing. You can easily tap into that flow state and everything is right and well, and I love that for you. So please tell me more. What is Anavasi and what led you to making it?
So Anavasi, I'll start with what the name of it means. It's a word that actually comes from Greek lineage,
Mhm.
and the word itself doesn't mean ascension. It actually means ascent. So it talks about
Okay.
the actual climb itself.
Okay.
And the reason I wanted to implement that was ascension sort of means that it's already happened.
Yeah.
And, like, I didn't want to make it a word where it's, if I called it ascension, it'd be people going into that already being that way inclined and understanding what that means. So I wanted to put a word that actually makes people who aren't quite awake yet, or haven't gotten to that point of understanding and awakening,
Right.
where they can watch it and it's almost like a guidebook for them. So what the film is basically about is stripping away programming, and the programming we've been having our whole lives, from school, from our parents, from every part of the system that has sort of been part of our lives all the way through. And not only to recognize it and break away from it, but then something that documentaries I've noticed these days quite often do, especially the YouTube heavy ones, is they
Yeah.
come forward with, here's how everything isn't good. And you're like, okay, now what? And they go, well,
Yeah.
that's it. Have a good time
And
with
then
that
that's all.
information. Goodbye. And you're
Yeah.
like,
All
no, no,
right.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
So the one thing I had to find the fine line was, I don't want to tell people how to navigate it either, because like we said earlier about diet, to
Right.
each person's awakening process is going to be vastly different from the other. They might need a near death experience. They might need to lose a family member. They might need something else. Like, you don't know
Yeah.
what it is.
Exactly.
And I have to sort of broad brush it. So what my overall intention was, the film itself is broken into 7 chapters. So there is a narrative film that runs through it. And then in between all these types of topics, there's basically interviews with people from all around the world. And there's some decent names in there too, but I've been very careful to not put anyone of ego into there. I've done my
Man,
due diligence
yeah,
and make sure that they're always coming from the right place of wanting to help humanity
yes,
and pass it back, rather than make it about themselves or their paycheck or anything else. And, like, oh, it's
exactly.
all about my name and how am I going to look? And it's
How is
like,
this?
it's not ours. This is something we're seeing through the motions of, and then it's like a kid, and it takes its own energy.
Exactly.
You let it go into the world, and it grows up.
Exactly.
And basically, every interview, why I've handpicked these people, of which there's 14 different people I'm interviewing, and I've done, I think, 9 at the last count. So there's still a few to go. And what that is to me is basically a symphony of voices. It's like people who can talk on levels and hit every kind of layer of that matrix all the way down into the lowest echelons, where
Exactly.
people may get one person talks and they may have one thought that just plants a seed in their head, and they don't get anything from the rest of the people because they're not ready to hear that yet.
Exactly.
And then eventually that'll go through the motions of, oh, I'm able to relate to that and I'm able to move through that. So as a short way to put it, it's basically a guidebook on awakening. That's what I'd call it.
I love that. And the irony of it is me literally also publishing the New Earth Guidebook to Healing and Ascension. That's
Beautiful.
that's hilarious. You have the film version of it. Like you can't make this. You can't make. You literally cannot make this up. What? I feel like I'm having an out of body experience right now. Like,
Amazing.
is this
Amazing.
happening? Like,
It's so funny that the more we're all doing the work, and the more that the world's kind of reforming that one consciousness. And this is one thing where I never understood that whole thing of we are one when I was younger, right? When I was doing
right,
philosophy
right.
at college and stuff. And I'd look at the we are one thing and I'm like, what does that actually mean? And
Yes,
now I realize that we're all individual, and that's a very important word, individual expressions
yes,
of the same consciousness.
exactly.
And the more we're all moving together, I really feel like the more we're tapping into the grid a
Hmm.
lot easier, but we're pulling ideas and things out of there that need to happen. And there's a lot of similarities between a lot of people's soul work now. Like I'm seeing it more and more.
Yeah.
And I know that you and I aren't going to make the same thing, but
No.
we're going to hit different points, with different people and
Right.
different audiences and different places in the world, or whatever it may be. And all of the work is necessary. And one thing, just to go back to one of your earlier questions, that shifted, and I've never been this way. I've never had a jealousy bone in my body. I just don't think I have it,
Yeah. Same.
where I've gone, oh, what another person has, I want. I've never done that. It's like I'm
Ever.
really happy for that person, and now that's
Yeah.
making me. And if they've got something better than me, it just makes me want to strive harder to get my own
Be
thing
able.
and
Right.
be able to reach
Exactly.
that level. So it's a good lesson. But I see this amongst a lot of like-minded creative community, or anyone constantly making stuff these days. That if I hear about someone making a film like mine, whatever it might be, I'm so happy, because I'm like,
Yeah.
we're moving into a way of new media. We're writing new books. We're doing
Yeah.
podcasts like this, and we have long form media instead of the mainstream media, and CNN going on, or whatever the hell it might be in the background. people
Exactly.
people are watching that collapse, including movies. It's like, the Marvel movies aren't going to last forever. Like, people are going to get tired of this.
Right.
And
Right.
we need to take the power back, and bring new media to the table. And I think that's one of the most important things, is we need to re-educate ourselves and everyone in the world simultaneously, rather
Yes.
than this, the webs of lies, and
Illusion
even the romantic movies that were out there, where it gives you a total false idea of
of
what a
what.
relationship is. And it's like, oh, if I do this, then I'll get the girl
Yeah.
this way. And it's like,
Yeah.
this is
That's
fairy
not.
tale stuff. It doesn't
That's not.
work that way.
This isn't. This is nonsense. This is foolishness.
Yeah,
No. That's.
and
That's
we've all been lied to, but I think the more and more people are seeing that, and we're looking for the alternative. And
exactly.
there's people here to provide it, and on this will grow. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's definitely that. I said that in one of my I think it was one of my season 1 interviews, where I said it's this time of where people are over the smoke and mirrors. And I think we compared it to the Wizard of Oz, where I said people are now being like, "Hey, there's a curtain here. Like
Yeah,
there's somebody back behind here pulling these puppet strings. Like this isn't. He's got a whole projector back there. Like what? It's like this. People are now, kind of like starting to see beyond the smoke and mirrors, and they're wanting the truth, like the actual truth, the no frills, no fluffs, no lies, no just saying the things that sound and look good. And it's happening. We're at that pivotal point in life. Now you're one of the people that's out there crusading with the truth kind of films.
I love the word crusading. It's a great word.
Crusade.
Yeah, crusading. I've always been had an affinity with warrior kind of energy. I
Yes.
always my dharma types that I got told by a friend of mine in India was the entertaining warrior, and I was like, yeah, that's a nice one. I'll take that. I like that a
Yes.
lot.
Yes.
But yeah, it's the way people are going, and this is one very key point that I always come back to is when people finally start to emerge as whatever they say or whoever they come out to you, the one thing that they're going to struggle to do in their human condition is actually reach out and say that
Yeah.
they were wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not up to the people who were or have already moved through that space to ever say, I told you so. Because it is
Correct.
the dumbest thing to do. Like, and I've seen people do that where it's like, oh, did you see? You're stupid because you thought like this. And do you see how dumb
Right.
you were?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that they were dumb. It's that thing of they're coming through that process themselves. You're privileged enough to already have been through your own kind of version of that, and then welcome them with open arms. Show them how beautiful it is on this side, and lead by example again. But you don't need to cut them down to size. I think it's one of the worst things people do.
Yeah, I had a long time ago when I was going through like what I can only describe as kind of like a manic episode and like the deconditioning and the deconstructing, and I was detoxing off of all the medications that I was on, and I do a lot of automatic writing. You know what that is, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So I do a lot of automatic writing, and I had this giant dry erase board that I had, and I was writing. And one of the messages that came that they wrote in huge letters, and I still have it on the board to this day, that said, "Show compassion and forgiveness to those who showed you none and caused you great suffering."
Wow,
And
powerful.
and I I never erased it, and I kept it there, and that was 2.5 years ago. But I now see and understand why, because there's been a lot of people who, you know, had the opportunity to maybe intervene or not play a part in a lot of my suffering, or joining in on the humiliation train while I was at my lowest points, who are now like going through their own process, and they've had to come back, like to me and be like, what's happening? And I'm not going to sit here and lie to y'all. It's rough. It's hard. It is. It's so hard. And like if anybody ever can come to me and be like, "No, it's not," like, that's a lie. It's a lie. If you were getting jumped every single day by somebody, like if there was a ringleading person who every single day came and like knocked you down and beat you to a pulp every single day, but then came back to you years later and was like, "I'm getting jumped and beat up every day. Help me."
Mm,
It does. It doesn't matter if you're the best saint in the world. It does. It takes a lot, for you to, like you said, not be like, "God, I try to tell you,
yeah.
try to," and I haven't. To this day, I have not, to anyone who's done that, and I've just been like, "Hey, listen, I get it. I understand. I know what's going on. Like, this is what's happening." But there's a whole lot of people who are coming through a lot of the things that we went through really early on, right now, that need what we have gone through, our experiences, and what we have to offer. So like you said, coming through with the compassion and the open arms and welcoming people, because it is rough out here, and I can't imagine coming in at this pivotal point. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like we're on like class 9,000 and they're just not, you know what I'm saying? Like you gotta, like, welcome, we'll try to catch you up to speed here, but you got a lot, so,
Yeah. Yeah. It can be a tiring process if you allow it to be.
right.
And you've just got to see it for what it is, but be that beacon for people. And it comes back to that, the slings and arrows that you sometimes get with it as well.
Yeah,
And every single thing can be put down to separation, because that's what the overall system wants. It wants divide and
exactly.
conquer. It wants to split you from your fellow soul. It just wants to keep everyone apart. That's what even this,
Yes.
stay 6 meters or 6 feet away from other people while COVID was going on. It's like that's that heart chakra vibration in that whole field. That's your
Yes.
field.
Yeah.
And the more we bring that in together, the better it is. And separation is the biggest one, where I know there's people still swinging from one side where they go, I see all the pitfalls of this. And then they go all the way back to, organized dogmatic religion, or
Yeah, right.
they go into politics, or they're sitting there talking about, left versus right, this, that. And I'm like, haven't you
Exactly.
seen this play out for
Yes.
so many years now, over and over in a loop? And it's a matter of, once you don't let any of that have an emotional impact on you, and you can move
Right.
through that. And actually, I take every bit of information as something that I don't analyze, but I'm like, okay, let's think about that before I react. Like, there's
Yes.
nothing that I really hear anymore that makes me go into that.
Yes.
I don't do that anymore. And like, I was doing that a while, like I was doing that for some
Yes.
years.
Yeah.
And now I think it's that point of, that's where you sort of start leading towards more of an enlightened life. Is
Exactly.
that even, the hardest one they always say is, there's an old quote, and I can't remember who said it, but it's that thing: if you think you're enlightened, go and spend the weekend with your parents.
Right.
And it's like, or your family. And it's that
Yes.
thing of, that's those last tests of the button pushers that might be able to push the
Yes.
button the wrong way. And if you can navigate any of those spaces without an emotional reaction, and you're kind of just this constant nice little ebb and flow, and you're
Yeah.
grooving through,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's the best place
Yes.
to be.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so anything that, well, before I say that, I watched your short film, Grace, and I wanted you to give us a little synopsis on how that one came about and the whole production of that.
Sure. I got off a feature film that I'd finished in 2018, and it went around Australia. It went international as well, to a couple of countries. America, I can't remember what state it was, but it did reach. And I wasn't really too. I was okay with it. It was a good experience, but it wasn't the film that I was happy with or really wanted to make. And I just wanted to reset myself and do something from my own heart. And Grace is basically about a little girl who gets abandoned, and the mother disappears and dumps her with this stranger who she's had a one night stand with. And he ends up going on this quest trying to find where the mother is. And basically turns out she's homeless, and there's this whole story that plays out. And the reason that came about, and why I wanted to do the production, I brought together probably the best team at the time that I'd ever worked with, because everyone came from a compassionate place. I handpicked everybody, and I
Yeah.
picked the best of the best over the years that I'd worked with. And I said, this is what I want to make. And everyone came with just nothing but heart, including the little kid who played Grace, because she
Yeah.
just held us together. She was amazing.
Yeah, she was cute.
And yeah, basically, I did research leading up to that, because there was more of a shift in homelessness in Melbourne. I started noticing, and it's not as bad as some places in the States,
Right.
where that I've heard about or seen. I've got some friends who live over there as well.
Yeah.
And it was going in that way, where it was very much in your face. And I thought, I'd love to talk to these people and find out how they got there. And I did that for about 3 months or so. I was taking them clothing and bits and pieces, sitting with them. Some of them abused me and told me to go away and swore at me and all sorts of things. And that's okay, because it's, I don't know their struggle. I can't
Right.
assume that I know what they're going through. And many of them were quite open and candid about why they were in the position they were in. And it was a thing of, they didn't really want to participate in the system anymore, or they
Yeah.
had some really bad trauma that just made them not want to be a part of anything. It was like a removal from society.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, because I got such a mixed amount of stories, but the intent again behind awareness of putting it into this film and making something that was, it takes a detour to go to that homelessness place on purpose. I didn't want to make a homeless movie. It was something that,
Right.
like,
Right.
this is about the people in it and how it affects other people. And when I brought that into it and I started doing it from that place, I realized that there was very much what people would do, because the film did really well. It won a heap of awards, like internationally,
Yeah,
it did
I
well.
bet.
But I noticed that people would watch it, shed a tear, get sad, and then it was basically, the film's over, and they'd go, well, glad that's not my life. And they just go about their day. And it's like,
Right.
it's funny, because it comes from a place of fiction. Those people aren't real to them. So they haven't
Right.
seen them firsthand. And that's
Right.
what kind of shifted me. That was like that necessary step to shift me to documentary, because the
Mm,
documentary I'm making now is
is
like, there's
real.
more of a, let's fuse the reality with
Yes.
some narrative and give you the best of
Yes.
both worlds. So
Yes.
it was like my favorite stepping stone to get there. And out of all the films I've made, whether short or feature or anything else, that's been probably my favorite so far is Grace, I'd say. It's a very personal film.
Do you do you feel the same way about Anavasi? Do you feel like there's a like, you know how parents say like, oh, there's a favorite amongst the children? There is who's
Like my mother says to me about me and my two brothers, where she's like, you may be my favorite, but please don't tell your brothers. And I'm like,
don't tell
don't
them.
worry. Well,
Yes.
now
Don't
it's on a podcast, so they're gonna find
right,
out.
like now they know. Secrets out, brothers.
But yeah, look, it's hard to say because I've had films I've made where I don't like them at all, and that's actually
Right.
been the majority. Where it's like it was a point in time,
Really?
yeah, where it's a point in time where I'm like, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. It's like that constant need for perfection.
That's your Virgo. That's your
Yeah,
Virgo in you.
that's the Virgo moon.
Look,
Yep,
see. I'm like, I know that one. I know that's effed me so much where I just didn't put out stuff. I know
yep.
that.
So
Yes.
that was the majority. Like when I was experimenting with film, Grace was more of a moving photo album for me. So I get very fond from the memory of it, and I really enjoyed the process of making it. Anavasi's its own beast. It's
Yeah.
this, and it's still going because we're still shooting it and we're still raising money to get it over the line and stuff. So it's like it's really in the hands of the people, this project. And I see it now as I am basically the conduit for the idea. So
Yes.
it's coming from a higher place. If I don't capitalize on it, it'll move to some other soul in the world who'll be able to execute it in their own way. And then they merge their own personality with it and they make the film themselves. And then I don't because I did nothing with it. So I feel like I'm the driver of the vehicle. It's not necessarily my favorite car because I've got so many more projects to go. I don't know what will be. So I think it's always the one you're currently working on is always
Yes.
your favorite.
That's
And
always your favorite.
and this currently is
Yes.
absolutely my favorite because it's like my lifeblood. It's my oxygen, It's like
Yeah.
while I'm making this, I feel really alive and I'm doing it. Once it finishes, I used to get into that space of the project's over, now what? And you'd get into that
Next.
sort of the blues a little. You're like, like what am I going to do next? But I know now it's like we were saying about relationships. You don't just jump to the next relationship.
Yeah.
You take a sabbatical, you reprieve a little, and you look at it all and you say, okay, that was what that was. I don't like to ride the wave of success. I've never liked it. I don't like when it gets to the back end and it's this weird thing of everyone's handing out awards. I get weird about that because
We're
I'm
like,
like, it's not.
right, like,
I appreciate it, but it's not why I'm doing this. It's not my
exactly.
drive. And my
Yeah.
drive is to make the content itself grow as a
Put
result of that content and then
put
put
it
it out
out.
there and let it go.
Exactly. That's
Yep.
yeah. Same.
And all I can say is the overall feeling in the aftermath is always pride when I do something and I've done it and it's hard work making a film.
Yeah.
It
And
takes
you're
a
like,
lot out of you. And it's pride at the end of the day. Yeah. In a good way, in a healthy way.
I feel like we have come to be masters of delayed gratification on a lot of the things that we do at this point.
Yep. Very well
Delayed
said.
delayed gratification. Okay,
It's
so
Yeah, yeah. It's a really good term. I like that a lot. I'm going to start using that. It's delayed gratification. Yep.
delayed gratification on all the things instead of like in the world where everything is like the instant gratification, you can order stuff and it's here immediately and then done and done and done.
Yeah.
We are the ones creating things for a world and people who are not here yet, and it's delayed gratification when
I
our
am
projects
totally using that phrase. I love that so much because the instant gratification model needs to go away. It's
gotta
really
go.
done a lot of damage.
It's gotta go.
And that's where patience comes back into it. We've got to be patient about our outcome and then very grateful for it. It's beautiful.
Imprints. Okay, so closing out, what are some future goals and projects that you want to film or do?
This is an interesting one because this project has changed my outlook so much. And it's even taking shape in a different direction. And what I love about documentary is it's broken my need for control because I have to interview people and not know what they say. And then
Right.
I have to edit something totally different as to how I pictured it. So I've got to let go of all my preconceived ideas, which I really like. And one thing that popped up during these interviews was speaking to the original people of the earth, and the people who have still
Yes,
passed on through tribal lineage and those cultures, whether Aboriginal, whether Maori tribes in New Zealand, whether even in America and the natives there, and people that I've spoken to, and in South America and everywhere else, and shaman and all these people still doing these practices. I'm only giving a glimpse of that in Anavasi and
exactly.
getting their point of view, but that's something for a future project I would really love to dig into. And what it's done for me, it's because it's such a personal thing to me, is because I got raised basically as a city boy, and breaking away from that and regrounding in nature. Nature's so important. And
Yeah.
the messages that these people have for us that have been passed down from generations, and it's so sacred to pass down. And when we start sharing that, and I see it brings people together. And one thing we can all relate to is when our feet are on the ground and our bare feet are on the earth, and we're
Yes.
all grounded together and we're in that field together, that is the most healing place to be, not only for the world, but for each individual soul. And I've been doing that while I've been meeting all these wonderful people, because it was always there and they've just brought it out of me more and more. And I feel like I need to keep doing that for my own journey, and then pay it forward to people and show them about those cultures and everything else. So that's one of many ideas for the future, but that's the main one I'm kind of keeping in the back burner for the minute.
So you think you'll always stick with doing like documentary style?
Not necessarily. When people expect something of me, I do the opposite.
Right. Yeah.
And
Or like
I've got that
do
nature where I'm
yes.
like, no, you know what?
Yeah.
I feel like this now, and this is what I do. I
Yes.
very much march to the beat of my own drum. I don't try and
Yes.
conform or comply.
Yes.
And yeah, the last few years will definitely tell you that. But it's this kind of thing with film where I've written some feature films, and I've got them as draft form, and I could actually go and start filming them tomorrow if I wanted to. But I realized that the more I experience life and the more I go through these processes of growth, the better my work becomes, and the more realistic and the intent in the work becomes, and everything else. There's an authenticity to it. And I feel like that needs to continue to happen. So I think in a perfect world, it'd be do a documentary and then do a normal narrative feature from the lessons I learned from that documentary into that narrative feature, and then go back and do another documentary again, or just go with the tide and I just want to be as flexible as possible in making what makes my heart sing and nothing else.
What classifies a feature film? Like what makes something a feature
A
film?
feature film is basically anything over, I'd say, an hour and 20 minutes or so. Like, so normally you're aiming at the 2 hour mark on average. And I very much want to explore a lot of things about, like, the human experience, about relationships themselves, and showing real relationships rather than what we've seen in a lot of Hollywood movies, and really getting down to
Yes.
that gritty stuff. Yeah, there's a lot on the plate, and I can't set myself up for that failure of going, I had so many ideas and I didn't capitalize on. It's like you have to pick one, and you've
You
got to
just
sometimes throw a few away and just sort of aim your focus to get something completed. And I think as long as I'm doing that and I'm in my sole purpose doing it, I'm happy. And
you're
it's like,
good.
that's good. Yeah.
You're good. This has been the best interview ever. There's been so much connecting, so many not coincidences, so much synchronicities, a lot of things. And I absolutely enjoyed having you on here. Please tell me where people can go to help support the film. I'll have all your social media and things, all the projects that you worked on your show notes here with the things, guys. So don't worry about that. It will be in the descriptions and show notes. But where can we have people help to raise funds for the Anavasi?
So if you go to anavasi.tv as a website, that's basically a landing page. It's all the information about the documentary. And through there's a link that takes you to a kind of like a crowdfunding, except
Okay.
the difference with it is I've done this on purpose. This is basically something that people can donate to, where 100% of their donation will go towards the film and this cause, rather than a percentage getting owned by the website or wherever else. So this actually
Right.
all comes through to us. And we're raising the budget. The budget's at about 250,000 odd Australian, and we've raised quite a bit of that with executive producers. So I'm still looking for executive producers with a bit more, who want a bit more of an investment in it. But the crowdfunding at $75,000 is open to crowdfunding, and we're about 10,000 or so into that already, and it's still open for another 5 months or so. So we're using it as we're shooting. So it's still in production, but we're still raising the funds because post-production is one of the most expensive things. So
Okay.
we're trying to get everything going before then. So yeah, anavasi.tv, and anything else, it's basically Christopher Kay Film on Instagram and YouTube, and things are going to be growing. There'll be clips up, trailers, a lot of stuff coming through in the next couple of months. So it's a really exciting time.
So excited, so excited. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being here and sharing your presence and energy with us and all the things. We're excited for what you have to come. I'm excited to see some more clips of the interviews and things that you're doing and all of it.
Thank you, Stacia. I'm so grateful for being on here too, and I love the work you're doing and everything you do. And as well as we had a mutual friend, Dr. Val Rytova.
Val.
She's actually in the documentary.
Yes.
So yeah, which has been amazing. So yeah, it's just everyone keeps finding everyone all over the world at the minute. It's just
Yes.
it's amazing. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Very grateful.
Of course. All right, guys. Until next time.